I remember the night clearly. I wish I didn't, but I do. Emily, I'm home, I called as I pushed the door shut behind me. I came early. I don't feel well. No answer. I frowned and put my keys on the table. Emily. Then I heard it. A man's voice. Soft. Laughing. At first, I thought the TV was on. But the TV wasn't on. The sound was coming from the bedroom. I walked slowly down the hallway, my heart starting to beat faster. Emily. I said again, quieter this time. I heard her voice. Wait. I think I heard something. Then the man said, relax. You said he works late. I stopped walking. I knew that voice. I heard it every day at work. Daniel. My boss. For a second, I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring at the bedroom door like it was something alive. Then I pushed the door open. Emily screamed. Oh my God. Daniel jumped off the bed. What the hell? I couldn't speak. I just looked at them. My wife pulled the blanket around herself, shaking. Daniel grabbed his shirt from the floor. Say something, Emily said, crying. Please say something. I looked at Daniel. You, in my house. He stared back at me, then said, this isn't what you think. I laughed. It didn't sound like my laugh. Really? Then what do I think this is? Emily started crying harder. I can explain. Explain what? I asked. Explain how my boss ended up in my bed with my wife. I'm really curious. Please, explain. Daniel put on his shirt and said, calm down. We can talk about this like adults. I walked into the room slowly. Adults? You want to talk about being adults? Emily said, please don't make a scene. I looked at her. A scene? Emily, I just found my wife cheating on me with my boss, and you're worried about a scene. She covered her face. I didn't mean for this to happen. I felt my hand shaking. How long? She didn't answer. I stepped closer. How long, Emily? Daniel said, that's none of your business. I turned to him. None of my business? You're sleeping with my wife. That makes it my business. He sighed like he was tired. Look, this situation is complicated. I laughed again. No, it's actually very simple. You betrayed me. Both of you. Emily said, I was lonely. I stared at her. Lonely? I worked every day for us. You were never home, she said. You were always working. I was working for our future, I said. For you. Daniel said, you can't blame her for being unhappy. I looked at him. You should stop talking. He crossed his arms. You need to accept reality. I walked up to him until we were face to face. Reality. Here's reality. You're my boss. She's my wife. And both of you lied to me. Emily whispered, I'm sorry. I looked at her, and that hurt more than anything. If you were sorry, you wouldn't have done this. She cried, I didn't want to hurt you. But you did, I said quietly. You destroyed me. The room was silent for a few seconds. Then Daniel picked up his jacket. I'm leaving. We'll deal with this at work. I said, don't worry. I won't cause trouble at work. He nodded. Good. Be smart about this. I looked at him and said, get out of my house. He left without another word. Emily tried to touch my arm. Please talk to me. I moved away. Don't touch me. She started crying again. I made a mistake. I said, no. A mistake is forgetting to lock the door. This is a choice. She fell to the floor, crying. What are we going to do? I looked around the room, at the bed, at the floor, at everything we own together. I don't know, I said. But I know one thing. She looked up at me. What? I took off my wedding ring and put it on the table. Nothing will ever be the same after tonight. She whispered, are you leaving me? I walked toward the door and stopped. I don't know yet. But the man who walked into this house tonight is not the same man who's walking out. Then I walked out of the bedroom, out of the house, and into the cold night, feeling like my entire life had just ended. I sat in my car and stared at my hands. What am I supposed to do now? I asked myself. No one answered. I just sat there in the dark and said, everything is gone. And for the first time in my life, I cried. I knew nothing would ever be the same again. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat in my car until morning, staring at nothing. When I finally went back home, Emily was sitting on the couch. Her eyes were red. She stood up quickly. Where were you? In the car, I said. All night? She asked. Yes. She walked closer. We need to talk. I shook my head. You should have talked before, not after. She started crying again. Please don't be like this. Like what? I asked. Like the man you cheated on. She said, it just happened. I laughed quietly. You don't accidentally cheat, Emily. She said, I was lonely. I replied, I was working for us. She whispered, I didn't think you'd find out. That sentence hurt more than anything else. So the plan was to lie forever. She didn't answer. I said, I'm going to work. She asked, are we okay? I stopped at the door. No, we are not okay. When I walked into the office, everything felt different. People looked at me, then looked away. 2 coworkers were whispering near the coffee machine. When they saw me, they stopped talking. Mark walked up to me. Hey, man. Hey, I said. He looked uncomfortable. Are you okay? Do I look okay? I asked. He sighed. I heard something. I said, then you heard the truth. He said quietly, I'm sorry. I nodded. Yeah, me too. A few minutes later, I got an email. Daniel wants to see you in his office. I stared at the screen and said, of course he does. Mark said, you want me to come with you? I shook my head. No, I need to do this alone. I walked into Daniel's office and closed the door. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look sorry. He just looked at some papers and said, sit down. I didn't sit. You wanted to see me. He leaned back in his chair. We need to talk about your performance. I almost smiled. My performance? Yes, he said. You've been distracted. Your numbers are down. I stared at him. You're joking, right? He said, I'm being professional. Professional? I said, you're sleeping with my wife. He said calmly, keep your voice down. I stepped closer to his desk. And now you want to talk about professionalism? He said, this is exactly what I mean. You're being emotional. I laughed. Emotional? You ruined my marriage. He replied, your marriage was already broken. I felt my fists clench. You really believe that? He said, I think you should focus on your job. But unfortunately, your performance has dropped, so we are moving you to a smaller role. I stared at him. You're demoting me. It's not personal, he said. It's business. I said quietly, everything about this is personal. He looked at me and said, here's some advice. Act like an adult. Come to work, do your job, and don't create drama. That's how you keep your career. I looked at him for a long time. Then I said, you know what's funny? What? He asked. A week ago, I respected you. He didn't reply. I said, now I just feel sorry for you. Then I walked out of his office. Mark was waiting outside. What happened? I said, I got demoted. What? He can't do that, Mark said. He just did, I replied. Mark said, this is wrong. I shrugged. Life is wrong sometimes. The rest of the day felt like a dream. No one talked to me normally. Everyone knew. Everyone pretended not to know, but I could see it in their eyes. When I got home, Emily was standing in front of the mirror. How was work? She asked. I said, he demoted me. She turned around. What? He said my performance dropped, I said. She looked guilty. I'll talk to him. I laughed. That's the problem. You already talk to him too much. She said, "That's not fair." I said, "Nothing about this is fair." She walked toward me. "What are we going to do?" I looked at her and said, "I don't know what you're going to do, but I know what I'm going to do." She looked nervous. "What do you mean?" I walked past her and went to the bathroom. I looked at myself in the mirror for a long time. "What happened to you?" I asked my reflection. I looked tired, older, broken. Emily stood behind me. "Please don't give up on us." I looked at her through the mirror. Us. There is no us anymore. She started crying again. I said, "I'm sorry." I turned around and said, "Sorry doesn't fix this." She asked quietly, "Then what does?" I thought for a moment. Then I said, "Nothing. Some things are broken forever." That night, I sat alone in the kitchen. I looked at my laptop, then at my phone, then at the wall. What am I doing with my life? I whispered. Then I opened my laptop and started typing my resignation letter. Emily walked in and asked, "What are you doing?" I looked at her and said, "I'm taking my life back." She looked scared. "What does that mean?" I replied, "It means I quit." And for the first time since that night, I felt like I could breathe again. "I really quit," I said quietly, staring at the email on my screen. Emily crossed her arms. "You're being dramatic." "I'm being dramatic." I asked. "You cheated on me with my boss, and I'm dramatic." She sighed. "You don't have to destroy your career because of a personal issue." I laughed. "Personal issue? That's what you call this?" She said, "You're overreacting." I looked at her for a long moment. "You know what hurts the most?" "What?" she asked. "You talk like you didn't do anything wrong." She looked away. I said I was sorry. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, you said the word, but you don't feel it." "That's not true," she said. I walked into the bedroom and pulled out a suitcase. She followed me. "What are you doing?" "I'm leaving," I said. "For how long?" she asked. I looked at her. "I don't know. Maybe forever." She looked shocked. "You're really going to throw everything away?" I put my clothes into the suitcase. "You already threw everything away. I'm just cleaning up the mess." She grabbed my arm. "Don't go." I gently pulled my arm away. "I can't stay here. Not after what I saw." "Where will you go?" she asked. "I'll figure it out," I said. "You're being stupid," she said. "You have bills. Responsibilities." I closed the suitcase. I also have self-respect. She went quiet after that. When I walked to the door, she said, "If you walk out, don't expect me to wait for you." I stopped for a second, then said, "You didn't wait for me anyway." Then I walked out. The apartment I found was small and old. The landlord, Mrs. Carter, showed me around. "It's not fancy," she said, "but it's clean." "It's fine," I replied. She looked at me carefully. "You look like a man who had a bad week." I smiled a little. "More like a bad life." She nodded slowly. "Well, sometimes a new place helps people start over." "I hope so," I said. She handed me the keys. "Rent is due on the 1st of every month. And try to sleep at night. You look exhausted." "I am exhausted," I said. That first night in the apartment was very quiet. No voices. No memories. Just silence. I sat on the floor and said to myself, "This is my life now." The next few weeks were hard. I applied for jobs every day, but nothing worked. Either I was overqualified, or they said they would call me later, but they never did. One afternoon, I sat in a coffee shop looking at job listings on my laptop. "Is that really you?" someone said. I looked up and saw Ryan, an old friend from college. "Ryan." I said, "Wow, it's been years." He sat down. "You look terrible." I laughed. "That's because my life is terrible." He leaned back. "Tell me what happened." So I told him everything. The cheating, the job, the resignation, the apartment, all of it. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "That's a lot." "Yeah," I said. I feel like I lost everything. He shook his head. No, you didn't lose everything. I looked at him. It feels like I did. He said, sometimes losing everything is the first step to winning. I frowned. That sounds like something from a movie. He smiled. Maybe, but it's true. I asked, what do you mean? He said, you hated your job, didn't you? I thought about it. Yeah, I did. And your marriage wasn't as perfect as you thought, he said. I sighed. I guess not. He leaned forward. So maybe this is not the end. Maybe this is a reset. A reset, I repeated. Yeah, he said. I started a small company last year. It's not big, but it's growing. I actually need someone I can trust. I looked at him. Are you offering me a job? I'm offering you a chance, he said. Low salary, long hours, big risk. I smiled a little. That sounds terrible. He laughed. Yeah, it does. But it might change your life. I looked at my laptop screen, then back at him. I don't have many options. He said, you don't need many options. You just need one good one. I sat there thinking for a long time. Finally, I said, okay, I'll do it. He smiled and held out his hand. Welcome to the worst job you'll ever love. I shook his hand. I really hope you're right. As I walked back to my small apartment that night, I kept thinking about what he said. Sometimes losing everything is the first step to winning, I repeated to myself. For the first time in a long time, I felt something new. Not happiness. Not sadness. Hope. This is the office, Ryan said, opening the glass door. I looked inside. It's small. He laughed. That's a polite way to say it. I've seen bigger living rooms, I said. Yeah, he replied. But this small office is going to make us rich one day. Inside, a woman looked up from her laptop. Ryan said, this is Lisa, my business partner. She stood up and shook my hand. Ryan told me about you. I hope he said something good, I said. She smiled. He said you're the hardest worker he knows. We need that. Then a guy in headphones waved from another desk. Ryan said, and that's Kevin, our senior developer. Kevin rolled his chair over. So you're the new guy? Yeah, I said. That's me. He nodded. Good. We needed help yesterday. I laughed a little. I'll try not to slow you down. Ryan clapped his hands. All right, welcome to the team. Low salary, long hours, and lots of stress. Lisa added, but if we succeed, we all win. I said, I'm not here for easy. I'm here for a new start. Ryan looked at me and nodded. Good answer. The first few weeks were exhausting. One night, I said, Ryan, it's midnight. Why are we still here? He replied, because our competitors are probably sleeping. Kevin said, and because we are crazy. Lisa looked at me. You can go home if you want. I shook my head. No, I don't want to go home. Ryan understood what I meant. He just said, all right, then let's order pizza and keep working. One night while we were working late, Kevin asked, so why did you leave your last job? The room went quiet. I said, my boss and my wife were having an affair. Kevin blinked. Oh, that's bad. Lisa said softly, I'm sorry. Ryan looked at me. You don't have to talk about it. I said, no, it's okay. That part of my life is over. Kevin said, if it makes you feel better, my ex stole my dog when we broke up. I looked at him. Your dog? He nodded seriously. Yeah, I still miss that dog. For the first time in months, I laughed. I'm sorry about your dog. Thanks, he said. Emotional pain comes in many forms. Weeks turned into months. We worked every day, sometimes even weekends. One evening, Lisa said, we got a new client. Ryan smiled. That's great. Kevin asked, big client or small client? Lisa replied, medium. But it's a start. Ryan looked at me. See? Progress. I nodded. Yeah. Progress. Later that night, Ryan and I were alone in the office. He asked, "Do you ever hear from Emily?" I shook my head. No. And Daniel? He asked. No, I said. Nothing. Ryan said, "Is that good or bad?" I thought for a moment. It's peaceful. He nodded. Peace is underrated. One afternoon, Mark, my old coworker, called me. Hey, I said when I answered. He said, "Man, you won't believe what's happening here." What? I asked. The company is in trouble, he said. Big trouble. I stayed quiet. Mark continued. Daniel made some risky investments. The company is losing money. People are getting laid off. I walked to the window and looked outside. I see. Mark said, "A lot of people blame him." I replied, "I'm not surprised." Mark asked, "Do you feel good about it?" I thought about that question carefully. No, I said. I don't feel good. I don't feel bad either. What do you feel? He asked. I said, I feel free. That night, I told Ryan everything Mark said. Ryan listened and then asked, "Do you want revenge?" I thought for a long time before answering. No. Really? He asked. Yeah, I said. Revenge won't fix me. Ryan said, "Then what do you want?" I looked around the small office, at the messy desks, the empty coffee cups, and the whiteboard full of plans. I want to become someone they regret losing, I said. Ryan smiled slowly. That's a much better plan. Lisa walked in and said, "What are you two talking about?" Ryan said, "The future." Kevin shouted from his desk, "If the future includes more work, I'm against it." Lisa laughed. "The future definitely includes more work." I sat down at my desk and opened my laptop. Good, I said. I'm not afraid of work. Ryan looked at me and said, "You're different now." Yeah, I said quietly. I had to change. He nodded. Pain changes people. I looked at the screen and said, "Yeah, but maybe sometimes pain also builds people." And for the first time in a long time, I felt strong again. Check your email, Lisa said one morning. I opened my laptop. What am I looking for? She smiled. Our new client signed the contract. I read the email twice. This is a big deal. Kevin spun his chair toward me. How big? Very big, I said. Ryan walked in with coffee. What are we celebrating? Lisa said, "The new client signed." Ryan looked at me and grinned. See? I told you this tiny office would change our lives. I said, "It's changing mine already." Kevin raised his coffee cup. To not being broke anymore. We all laughed. A few weeks later, Ryan said, "We are meeting an investor today. Be ready." I asked, "What's his name?" "Mr. Howard," Lisa said. "He's serious, so don't joke too much." Kevin looked at me. "So you should definitely not talk." I replied, "I'm very professional." Ryan laughed. You? Professional? I've seen you eat cold pizza for breakfast. Only on busy days, I said. Later that afternoon, we sat in a conference room. Mr. Howard walked in, shook my hand, and said, "Ryan told me a lot about you." "I hope it was good," I said. He replied, "He said you're the reason this company runs on time." I glanced at Ryan. That's a lot of pressure. Mr. Howard smiled. Pressure builds strong people. We talked for 2 hours about plans, growth, and risks. At the end, Mr. Howard said, "I like this team. I think you can build something big." Ryan said, "We won't disappoint you." After he left, Kevin said, "Did that just happen?" Lisa nodded. Yes, it did." Ryan looked at me. "Walk with me." We stepped outside the building. He said, "I want to ask you something." "Okay," I said. He looked serious. "I want you to become a partner in this company." I thought I heard him wrong. A partner? "Yes," he said. "You worked harder than anyone. You believed in this when it was nothing. I trust you." I didn't know what to say. Ryan, I don't have money to invest. He shook his head. I'm not asking for money. I'm asking for commitment. I looked down for a moment. A year ago, I lost everything. He nodded. I know. And now you're offering me ownership. I asked. He smiled. You didn't lose everything. You just changed direction. I took a deep breath. Yes, I'll do it. He held out his hand. Partner. I shook his hand. Partner. That night, I sat alone in my apartment and looked around the small room. A year ago, I had a house and a marriage, I said to myself. Now I have this place and a company. My phone buzzed. A message. It was from Emily. Can we meet and talk? Please. I stared at the screen for a long time. I said quietly, why now? The phone buzzed again. I know I don't deserve your time, but please. Just once. I sat on the chair and stared at her message. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Part of me wanted answers. Part of me wanted closure. I called Ryan. He answered, What's up, partner? I said, Emily texted me. He was quiet for a second. What did she say? She wants to meet, I said. And what do you want? He asked. I don't know, I replied. I thought I was over it. Ryan said, Maybe this is not about her. Maybe this is about you. What do you mean? I asked. Maybe you need to see her again to realize how much you've changed, he said. I leaned back in my chair. I'm not the same person anymore. He said, Exactly. So go meet her as the new you. I thought for a moment. What if all the anger comes back? Ryan replied, Then you'll know you're still hurt. But if it doesn't, you'll know you moved on. I said quietly, I'm not doing this for her. I know, he said. You're doing it for yourself. After I hung up, I looked at the message again. Then I typed one word. Okay. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling. This meeting won't change my past, I said to myself. But it might change my future. For the first time, I wasn't nervous to see her. I was calm. And I realized something important. The man she betrayed was weak, tired, and afraid to lose everything. But the man who was going to meet her now had already lost everything once and survived. And that changed the power between us. I saw her sitting by the window when I walked into the cafe. She stood up slowly. Hi. Hi, I said, sitting across from her. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other. She looked tired, nervous, different. She said, Thank you for coming. I didn't come for you, I said. I came for me. She nodded slowly. That's fair. The waiter came. I said, Just coffee. She said, Same. When the waiter left, she looked at me and said, You look different. So do you, I replied. She looked down at her hands. I don't know where to start. Start with the truth, I said. She took a deep breath. Daniel lost his job. I didn't react. I see. She continued. There's an investigation. Fraud. The company is in serious trouble. I stirred my coffee. That sounds like his problem. She looked at me. I'm not with him anymore. I nodded once. Okay. She frowned. That's all you have to say. What do you want me to say? I asked. Congratulations. She shook her head. No. I just thought, you should know. I already knew the company was in trouble, I said. She said quietly, I made a mistake. I looked at her. You made a choice. She started crying. I was stupid. I thought he loved me. I didn't say anything. She continued. After you left, everything changed. He changed. He became cold. Angry. When the company started failing, he blamed everyone. He blamed me too. I took a sip of coffee. I'm not surprised. She whispered, I lost everything. I looked at her and said calmly, No. You traded everything. She cried harder. I deserve that. We sat in silence for a moment. Then she said, Do you remember when we first met? Yes, I said. You spilled coffee on my shirt and said it was my fault. She smiled a little through her tears. You laughed. I loved you, I said simply. She covered her mouth and started crying again. I know. I leaned back in my chair. Why did you really ask me to meet? She looked at me with red eyes. I want another chance. I didn't answer. She said, I know I don't deserve it. I know I hurt you. But I was hoping, maybe, we could start over. I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, do you know what the worst part was? She whispered, what? It wasn't seeing you with him, I said. It was realizing that while I was working hard for our future, you were destroying it. She cried quietly. I hate myself for that. I said, months ago, if you asked me for another chance, I would have said yes immediately. She looked up quickly. Really? Yes, I said. Because I loved you more than I loved myself. Tears rolled down her face. And now? I looked at her and spoke slowly. Now I love myself more. She started shaking. Are you saying no? I nodded. I'm saying the man you betrayed is gone. She cried harder. Please don't say that. It's the truth, I said. That man was weak. He was scared to lose you. He was scared to be alone. I'm not that man anymore. She reached across the table and tried to hold my hand. But I still love you. I moved my hand away. You loved the man who worked all day and never complained. You didn't love the man himself. That's not true, she said. Then why was he so easy to replace? I asked. She had no answer. After a long silence, she said, what am I supposed to do now? I stood up slowly. That's not my problem anymore. She looked up at me, crying. So this is goodbye. I looked at her one last time. No. This is closure. She whispered, I'm sorry. I nodded. I know. But sometimes sorry is just a word. I turned and started walking away. She called my name one more time. I stopped but didn't turn around. I really did love you, she said. I closed my eyes for a second, then said, I believe you. But love without loyalty is just a lie. Then I walked out of the cafe. When I stepped outside, I took a deep breath and looked up at the sky. I'm free, I said to myself. And for the first time in my life, I truly meant it. Mark called me late one evening. Hey, I said. It's been a while. He replied, yeah. I didn't know if I should call you, but I thought you'd want to know what's happening. I leaned back in my chair. I already know the company is in trouble. Mark said, it's worse than trouble. There's an investigation. Fraud, missing money, fake reports. It's bad. I stayed quiet for a moment. And Daniel? He's the main target, Mark said. People are saying he made risky deals and tried to hide the losses. I asked, is he going to jail? Mark sighed. I don't know. But he lost his job. And no company wants to hire him now. I walked to the window and looked outside. I see. Mark asked, do you remember how he used to walk around the office like he owned the world? Yeah, I said. I remember. Well, now people don't even answer his calls, Mark said. I said quietly, that's how life works sometimes. Mark asked, do you feel bad for him? I thought about it. I don't feel anything. Mark said, you're a better man than me. If someone did that to me, I'd want revenge. I replied, I wanted revenge too. But not anymore. Why not? He asked. Because revenge would keep me connected to him, I said. And I don't want that. Mark was quiet for a second. Then he said, you really changed. Yeah, I said. I had to. A few days later, my phone rang again. I didn't recognize the number. Hello. I said. There was silence for a moment. Then I heard a voice I knew very well. It's me, Daniel said. I didn't say anything. He continued, I know you don't want to talk to me. You're right, I said. He sighed. I deserve that. I walked to the kitchen and sat down. What do you want? He said, I need help. I almost laughed. Help? From me. Yes, he said. You know people in the industry. You always had good connections. Maybe you can help me find a job. I shook my head even though he couldn't see me. You're calling the wrong person. He said, I'm sorry. Those words sounded strange coming from him. Sorry for what? I asked. For everything, he said. For what happened with Emily. For how I treated you at work. For the demotion. For everything. I remembered the day in his office. His voice telling me to act like an adult. I said, Do you remember what you told me the last time we had a private conversation? He was quiet. I said a lot of things. You told me to act like an adult, I said. He didn't reply. I continued. You told me to come to work, do my job, and not create drama. He said quietly, I remember. I said, So here's my advice. Act like an adult. He took a deep breath on the other end of the phone. I know I deserve that. I replied, This isn't revenge. This is just life. He said, I lost everything. I looked around my apartment and thought about the night I sat in my car with nothing left. Yeah, I said. I know how that feels. He said, I made terrible mistakes. Yes, you did, I replied. He asked quietly, Can you forgive me? I thought about that question carefully. I don't hate you, I said. But I don't forgive you either. He didn't speak. I said, I just don't care anymore. There was a long silence. Then he said, I guess this is goodbye. I replied, Yeah. Goodbye, Daniel. Then I hung up the phone. I put the phone on the table and sat there for a long time. I thought this moment would feel better, I said to myself. But it didn't feel good. It didn't feel bad either. It just felt like the end of a story that no longer mattered to me. Ryan stood next to me in the new office and said, Do you remember our first office? I laughed. The tiny room with the broken chair. He nodded. Yeah. And now look at this place. I looked around at the big office, the glass walls, the busy employees. It doesn't feel real. Lisa walked over and said, The new team starts on Monday. Kevin added, Which means more work for everyone. I said, That's a good problem to have. Ryan looked at me and said, I'm proud of you. I frowned. Why? He smiled. Because a year ago, you walked into my office looking like a man who lost everything. Now look at you. I leaned against the desk. I did lose everything. Lisa said, No. You lost the wrong things. Kevin nodded. And you kept the important things. I crossed my arms. Like what? Ryan said, Your self-respect. Your work ethic. Your ability to start over. I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, A year ago, I thought my life was over. Lisa asked, And now? Now I think it was just beginning, I replied. Kevin said, So if you could go back, would you change anything? I thought about that question carefully. No. Ryan looked surprised. Really? Not even the pain? I shook my head. The pain is what changed me. Lisa said softly, You're stronger now. I nodded. Yeah, I am. Later that evening, I sat alone in my office. Ryan walked in and said, You're still working. I smiled. I like it here. He sat down across from me. Do you ever think about Emily? Sometimes, I said. And Daniel? He asked. Sometimes, I replied. Ryan said, Are you still angry? I thought for a moment. No, I'm not angry anymore. Then what do you feel? He asked. I looked around the office again and said, Nothing. He smiled. That's not a bad thing. I nodded. Yeah. It means they don't control my life anymore. Ryan stood up and said, You know what your real success is? What? I asked. He said, You survived the worst time of your life, and you didn't become a bad person. I sat there thinking about that after he left. I didn't become a bad person, I said to myself, but I did become a different person. I looked out the window at the city lights and smiled a little. I'm not the man who got betrayed, I said quietly. I'm the man who survived. Lisa walked into my office and said, "You got a letter." A letter? I asked. Who still sends letters? She smiled. I don't know, but this one has your name on it. She placed it on my desk and walked out. I stared at the envelope for a long time. I recognized the handwriting. I said quietly, "Emily." I opened the letter slowly and started reading. I don't know if you will read this, but I had to write it. I'm moving to another city. I wanted to see you one last time, but I know I don't have the right to ask for that. So I'm writing instead. I just want to say I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry I said before, but the kind of sorry that comes with regret every day. You were the best man I ever knew, and I was too blind to see it. Losing you was the biggest mistake of my life. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope you are happy. Emily. I folded the letter and put it back in the envelope. Ryan walked in a few minutes later. You look like you just read something important. I nodded. A letter from Emily. He sat down. What did she say? I looked at the envelope. She said she's moving away. She said I was the best man she ever knew. She said losing me was the biggest mistake of her life. Ryan asked, "How does that make you feel?" I thought for a moment. It makes me feel calm. Calm? He asked. Yeah, I said. A year ago, this letter would have destroyed me. Today, it just feels like the end of a chapter. Ryan nodded slowly. Are you going to reply? I shook my head. No. Why not? He asked. Because some stories don't need responses, I said. Some endings don't need words. Ryan smiled a little. You really changed. I looked out the window at the city. Yeah, I did. He stood up and said, For what it's worth, I'm glad you walked into that coffee shop the day I saw you again. I smiled. Me too. After he left, I looked at the letter one more time, then put it in a drawer and closed it. I forgive you, I said quietly, but I'm not coming back. I stood up and looked out of my office window at the city below. A year ago, I thought I lost everything, I said to myself. But I was wrong. This time, I didn't lose everything. I found myself.